Yeah, this is a beautiful set. The idea of using these long shots, I think, are good because it allows the audience to work as well. And it's knowing how long you should draw out the tension before they start to get fidgety. And of course, what helps enormously is the music, keeps it alive. And it's a scene of silence after all the noise and running around. It's kind of a relief, but there's a tension to this as well. And Ian was always full of little idiosyncrasies. You see that little mouth movement he did just before he looked into the scope. And the little jump.
I don't know yet.
I think I never got Sigourney on the day. I think we were running behind. Yes. So I think the reason why is I never got round to her.
A little talk. How's Kane?
He's holding, no changes.
And
It kind of works though because
our guest?
by holding him, you get a sense that there's something going on.
I have confirmed that he's got an outer layer of
There's a
polysaccharides.
duplicity to Ash
Funny habit of
that you can't
shedding
quite work
cells
out.
and replacing them with
So it's a clue
silicone
for what you know later, for what you'll find out later.
and a prolonged resistance to adverse environmental conditions. Is that enough?
There's some great gobbledygook in this, and I must hand it to the actors the way they pulled it off and
Thank you.
made it come alive.
Well, it's an interesting combination of elements, making him a tough little son of a bitch.
And you let him in.
I was obeying a direct order, remember?
So now we have
Ash,
Sigourney
when
beginning to
Alice
show
and
authority,
Kane are off the ship, I'm senior officer.
and she's suspicious.
You also forgot the science division's basic quarantine law.
No, that I didn't forget.
Oh, I see. You just broke it.
Look, what would you have done with Kane? Hmm? You know his only chance of survival was to get him out here.
So this scene really we had to have to explain,
Breaking quarantine, you risk
you know,
everybody's
the
life.
pecking order, the logic,
I've left him outside.
and just explain why
Jeopardized the rest.
his argument about letting them in and her argument about saying you disobeyed you disobeyed the first rule in the book. They should have quarantined them and had them kept away from them.
You do your job.
That would be in the book of space. One of the things that I wanted to remind people is that even in, let's say this film takes place in 100 years' time, or less, 50 years' time, the way technology is moving, Mozart will still be played, Vivaldi will still be played, and Mozart particularly, who's the true genius of music, otherwise we wouldn't have rock and roll today without him.
Dallas.
It also lets you in a little bit on Dallas. Shows that, you know, what kind of person he is. Is he spiritual? Is he was certainly sensitive?
Ripley, meet me in the infirmary right away.
Dallas, please begin.
I made this handheld because of the slight movement, which again, you're wanting to make an audience uneasy. They know it's in there somewhere, and they don't know what to expect. Because I think even when a film comes out and people get the heat from the movie and they want to see it, they still don't know where it's going to happen. So this could be the scene that scares the hell out of them. But I think we now had enough tension going. I was trying to work out of a shock on the day and we couldn't. So that's a cheap shock. but it worked. And I always felt this was a bit artificial, that nothing really happened, and yet on reflection actually it was good because there was worse to come. It's worth mentioning the sound man on this, Jimmy Shields. You'll notice that light even has a sound, right? So if you listen to the track, you'll hear all kinds of weird and wonderful, very subtle sounds. In fact, I did, I think, 4 or 5 films with Jimmy, who's still going strong. That's the corner you expect, and then it drops. That's as good as we could do on the day. And all we could do was have the prop man drop it.
What? It's up there somewhere.
So you're convinced that something's going to happen to Ian here. Of course, it's not. Good shot. Now, the interior of this thing, we made a rubber case, and the inside of it there is all shellfish. They are, on its surface there, they are oysters, clams. So there's oysters and clams, all fresh. And so every morning we'd have a bucket of oysters and clams, and I'd just put them in with tweezers and just dress it. But it kind of looks real. But it is real. I like the 3 heads in this. I like Dallas just there, absolutely staring in silence at it. This was interesting because this scene, at one stage, had a suggestion, tonally, that she and Dallas have some kind of relationship. And we thought it didn't go anywhere, and therefore it was puzzling, so we withdrew it. We didn't need it. It was better to keep it all about business. Actually, the scene we had, it was a good scene. And sometimes on reflection, the innuendo of a relationship might have been useful. I like Tom's take on just the relaxed pragmatist, and sometimes almost the only voice of reason, and refuses to get drawn into arguments or discussions. Very cool captain. Feels familiar, you know, so even in 50 years' time, people are still the same. There's the old wobbly shot, nearly breaking the mount on the Panavision. This is just handheld. They're shaking. I've got 2 prop men shaking their seats. It was ridiculous. But it works, you know, whatever it takes. The problem is you've got to get them into that mode to understand that it'll be fine. I love this cue here as they go through, or is it, wait a minute, as they come out, walk in the park, I think he says in a minute. There it is. Sigourney, a little glimpse of Sigourney looking appropriately anxious and relieved. Interestingly enough, they are now seem to have been emotionally drawn together through that rather anxious interlude. So they're kind of working as a team. And I kind of like this element of humor in here. The idea being that they're going to go back home now. The problem is they're going to have to go back in the hypersleep, which they don't like. You get a reference to a lot of Oriental food in this, and also the Hawaiian shirt of Harry Dean, who probably picked it up in some station way off somewhere, just off Mars, where they go into some gift shop. He gets cards for the kids that he'll probably see in 4 years' time, and so that's why he bought his Hawaiian shirt. And we hit the breakfast scene before they're going to go back into hypersleep. In fact, they'd probably be eating food in special preparation so that once they're in the hypersleep, they would, to be graphic, secrete or lose the food. So it'd be kind of liquid form. This is a good scene to hear Jimmy Shields' sound effects. You can hear a hum which rises and falls, which is always there. Something is always there, which makes you uneasy, because the sounds are almost organic. Jimmy used a lot of organic sounds. Okay, here's the famous scene. I think most of that food in there was muesli. Little look from Ian there as the kind of doctor on the board. He's still watching him closely because obviously he doesn't believe it's gone away. Dirty joke from Yaphet. Here it goes. Well, I didn't ever show them what would come out. They never saw that. And we did all this in one take, but with 5, or was it 4 cameras, with all the airlines prepared. So once he's on the table, it's all preset to go. So all this is kind of one camera. And he starts to thresh. It's all handheld, and then you go to, he starts to spasm. Boom. That's an airline inside his chest, inside his vest. Now he's going into a spasm frenzy. Whoa. Wow, that's pretty good. That's pretty heavy. Listen to the sounds. It's a baby. It's a boy. And I had to have a little railway track across the table to get rid of it. I didn't know how the hell to get rid of it. So we had to do a lash up of a railway track going through all the debris on the table. And if you spot it and run frame by frame, after John hits his frenzy, his spasm, you cut in, and then there's an artificial chest screwed to the table, which was made in fiberglass with a hole in it. His shirt draped, stretched tight over it, prepared. We razored the fabric, then saturated it with blood. So when the ram happened, it would come through the shirt. And poor John is bent in an S-bend underneath the table with his head sticking out with this thing holding him to the table, with his artificial chest holding him to the table. So underneath, Roger Dickon had to crush in there with John, with the little alien, and it was physically just rammed it through physically with it, like it was like a gun. And so the baby worked from a trigger. So he could open the mouth and make it look around with a very simple trigger. The rest was blood and KY jelly.